So if you're one of those people out there and you think Wi-Fi and EMF doesn't have any effect on your body, think again. I just met with this scientist of a company that we use and we recommend, and you're going to be astounded by what you hear and what's the truth and what the science is into the stuff that we love, right? We love our EMF and Wi-Fi and our phones and all our gadgets. We love it, but it has side effects. And if you're not dealing with those properly, you're waiting for problems to arise that you probably aren't going to understand and know how to deal with. So I hope you really enjoy this podcast. I think you're going to really love it. All right, we want to welcome you here. It's Dwar. I'm trying to pronounce the name right. He is one of their top guys, one of the co-founders of a company called Bodywell. And Bodywell is a company that we use that really, I have to be careful with my words here, but it helps to strengthen your body against EMF, if I'm using the right words. And basically, whether you like it or not, EMF, Wi-Fi, it's not going anywhere, right? We started at 0G, then went to whatever 2G, we're at 5G. No telling what G we're going to end up going with. And all of us love our technology, right? I mean, so we're having this podcast here via technology. We can't do it without, but we got to have layers of protection. And so this Bodywell company, I really love. And for all of our members, not only we have Nerve Health Institute in our clinic, we also have body chargers where we're helping people worldwide at home. And we're offering solutions to people for things that they probably aren't aware of. So we're really happy that you're here with us, Dwar, today, and just looking forward to kind of sharing a wonderful conversation. All the people that we have in terms of our members and patients that we have on both sides are always interested in why I pick technologies and why I use them. So we want to get into the science, but try to get it to where people can understand it. So welcome for being here today. And where are you? Say you're in Florida?
Yes. First, thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure. We know that awareness is part of the motivation to do better. And this is really everything about Bodywell. Yeah, we're actually in Southeast Florida. We have our offices over here for more than a decade. And we are going in research the beginning of the 2000s. So we are not new to that area.
Amazing. So how did you get started? I know you said you're originally from Israel, and you're one of the chief science guys with the company. How did you get into this?
Well, so the company itself, the philosophy actually started in Switzerland. And until today, the actual manufacturing is done still until today in Switzerland, where the level of conscience regarding health in general was how we can be better, what's kind of element in the environment affecting us. We all know that technology is developed. And not like maybe tobacco or whatever, has some benefits. So the idea was not necessarily how to avoid it, but how to incorporate it in a way that we have just a safer technology. So we can have the benefits, but we're reducing dramatically the risk. That's the idea behind it. You mentioned that originally I'm from Israel, and I have to say that some of the root of these things happen in the military. The military is, as you probably know, develop a lot of, tools and weapons that related to or using or trying to avoiding, radio frequencies in certain ways, and some of the deep research in the military found out that people that exposed to very high level of EMF, especially back in the days in the 90s, they actually have a very it's affecting their performance. Forget about right now what it actually can be developed to, and that's concerns start to have more and more research to try to understand what's the actual effect and if there is a way that we can mitigate it. Think about pilots that have whole helmets with a lot of information on their head, or any kind of that environment in a tank, especially where if you familiar a little bit with frequencies, that when you have a lot of metals, this actually might make the problem much greater. So to to have their tools and trying to understand how we can mitigate maybe some of the effect. That's where it actually started. The shock happened that if you're familiar with Havana Syndrome, this was when the Russian actually used the radio frequencies to hurt our diplomats and our soldiers. And the effect was very hard to recognize. It took a while to understand what's actually happened. But only then I think people realize almost how dangerous it is. How you can actually weaponize it. So this was a little bit about the background. Obviously, from there we develop. We have some technology that we currently the owner not just of the IP but the manufacturing elements and everything else, and we were able to create this technology that we were able to embed it to. As you probably know, we have the biochip, which is for your phone, and biocard and other elements where they reduce or they mitigate dramatically the amount of the radiation that absorb in the body. It just a point which is important. We actually did in the lab to prove there is a test called TRP-TIS test, which basically tests the amount of the signal of the radiation that come to the phone, then come from the phone back. And we show in that test that we have zero effect on the frequency itself, on the radiation. What we actually did, we actually biologically interact with the body to be more resilient. The simple analogy I can give is think about when you have a boat that's rocking because of wind and waves in the right, and people can have motion sickness. The reason is probably in your area you know it very well, but there is two inputs to the brain which are not synchronizing in a way. One of them say I'm stable, the other one say I move, and the brain don't know what to do. That's creating this sickness. So when we give a pill or we give a patch or we give anything that actually helping with that, the only thing we do, we're giving reference to the brain. And then when we do that, suddenly the brain using the muscles, using everything else to deal with this motion. Instead of, see, we didn't change not the waves, we didn't change the wind, but we changed how the body react to that input. And that's what's Bodywell really doing.
And I think a common thing that people don't realize is that, when you have a cell phone in your hand, when you have a laptop, when you have, this Wi-Fi signal, we can't see it. It's invisible. It's an invisible light form, right? That's around us. And literally Wi-Fi is designed to go through things. So people just don't think about it, but it's going through you, like it or not. It's going through you. And if you're not doing something to mitigate that, then you're just waiting for some of that to potentially interfere. And from my perspective, I want you to think about it. This thing right here is a power company, and I've been working on it for almost 30 years. This power company is hardwired to trillions of cells. Trillions. Is that wild? Like if you think about all the nerves, your brain and your spinal cord, there's 88 major nerves. Those 88 major nerves connect to all those trillions of cells in your body. That's the wiring network we're in. So you can imagine that invisible Wi-Fi going through you. Well, of course it can cause some interference in the transmission of signals, because remember, all these cells, there's input into the brain and output. And 80% is input, believe it or not. 80% is input. It's called sensory, and the other side is motor. So you can imagine that 80%, us feeling what's in our environment, all of our senses, like we have light touch and deep touch and proprioception and all these different senses that our body has, it can interfere with that transmission of signaling, whether it's up or down, and it can cause a lot of problems. And so have you seen a lot of people? I know we have in our practice, we have ways of helping strengthen people to Wi-Fi, strengthen their nervous system to Wi-Fi. And eventually I got to a point where I'm like, okay, we could do this so much, but we got to have some sort of thing to help strengthen you to it, because otherwise, if you don't, I mean, it's just getting greater and greater and greater. So what types of things has your company seen in terms of helping people, in terms of people that get, really sick with Wi-Fi?
Yeah. So, I mean, in Europe, I think it's a little bit more developed than here. I think from reason that everybody understand. But there is already they want to describe in Europe the syndrome as a disease. In other words, there is already people that have EMF hypersensitive, which have problems sleeping, concentrating, and everything else. But I want you to remember that we find out that there is at least two of ways that it can cause this, and we were able to kind of mapping this. One of them is what we call, what you describe is ion force oscillations, specifically what we call voltage gate ion channel or the voltage gate calcium channel. Now, those actually were found that under certain exposure to RFR, which I'm going to explain just a bit why it's so, because one of the things that kind of push back those, because it says, oh, visible light is higher energy and so forth. So how come this can do something? And I'm going to explain it in a second, but just the mechanism. So we have a very sensitive ion gate channel on each one of the cells. And they actually found out that this oscillation, which you mentioned that it's going through us, right? And that's why the microwave heating food, right? Because they find out that 2.4 specifically is oscillating those molecules of water really, really fast. And imagine what it's doing to our cells. And one of the things we find out that's actually keep it open, the gate. And therefore we have flood, let's say, of calcium and then cascade of a lot of problems, which ROS, and then eventually it can develop even to DNA damage. So this is one of the things, but we find out something extremely disruptive, in thinking, because in December 2025, just not long ago, Yale University actually, published in Cell report a study which they find out. I mean, that study done on human stem cells. In other words, they took from adult stem cells and they grow it in the lab, and they actually tried to imitate a baby forming his brain. And they find out with 4,000 times less the allowed measure, like what's the FCC actually allowed. So we're talking about significant less than even what it's actually allowed, 4,000 times if you want to be correct. And then this is actually was affecting directly the DNA that associate, for example, with autism specifically. So this was why it's such a kind of changing, I think, and making really dramatic impact, because this is done on human, not like on animals. Sometimes they say they discount because, it's done on animal, right? Even like they are different biology. And then the second thing, it's happening such a low level, like 4,000 times. So this is, imagine like a Bluetooth device, which about the 2.4, but in a very low level, even for, compared, let's say, to the Wi-Fi. But it actually was changing and affecting DNA directly. So this is actually a cell. I recommend everybody to go, and it's a little bit more technically, but it's very revealing. And why I say that, because think about it. People say, well, we have the lights, we have radiation and frequency from everywhere, and that's correct. But people don't realize what's the difference. This is actually what we call man-made radiation. Man-made radiation are very different than natural radiation. They actually what we call technically as a coherent and polarized. In other words, they are much more focused. The same way that why laser light can make you blind, even though it's just for what? It just very, very concentrate. Like when you're taking a glass and you're putting the sun, so it's hitting much greater, right? We didn't change the rays in the sun, but we focus them. So in natural environment, the wave go against each other, so they canceling each other, go in different directions, so they're not focused. So, and our body evolved actually to use it for our own benefits. For example, we have UV light where our body can create the vitamin D when you have infrared when it's anti-inflammatory and so forth. But there is another element of this. You mentioned the G, right? So the generation is, I want you to think about, people don't realize what it actually means, but the generation designed to accomplish something, a goal, and then the technology go to that generation. So first generation was what we call analog phone, right? So this is where the original phones were introduced. Very similar, more close to what we call FM and AM radio. This is actually, FM it's frequency modulation, and AM it's amplitude. So it's one of them is how high and how wide, right? So that's how we encoded the data to the wave. So analog, right? The second generation was text, which require us to do a digital already line. In other words, this is a big difference, because let me just give a short analogy how it's not biologically can even adjust to our body. So I want you to think, we see when they see the frequency, right? So you have the S kind line, the scene line, right? So think about it, a kid that's going in a ramp with skateboard, right? So the 15-foot high, the kids go, he used gravitational force to accelerate, propel himself, speed out, right? And do it. Now imagine the same height, but now it's square, right? So you see, he's just gonna fall. There is no other ways. There is no biological, there is natural way that he can take this energy and convert it to something else other than full impact to the bone and probably break some bones, right? This is actually the people don't realize, but digital lines is actually square. It's all 0 and 1. There is nothing in between. It's not like natural light. It's like I do, the light on and off in a second. Biologically, we cannot, there is no system in our biology that can even comprehend this information or even adjust to it. It's just too fast. You know what I mean? And that's, so think about like this lights or this, what we call photons, because eventually this is just photons that hitting our cells. They are extremely focused and they're extremely strong. And, people don't realize where is the problem. And I think it's not because they don't know, because it's almost hidden. Nobody talk about it. We all know, for example, an X-ray is about more than a million times more energetic than, let's say, the microwave. So, and all of us did a few times in our life an X-ray, right? And if you ask the physician that prescribe you the X-ray, he's telling you it's dangerous, but the exposure time is extremely limited, right? So in other words, you try to understand, okay, what's actually mean exposure time, right? Because if you think about what's the difference between 1 second of X-ray to 1 hour, which is going to kill you, it's that really the amount, the accumulation. So think about it, if there is photons of X-ray, think about it like the amount of them. So imagine if I throw in you a small stone, not a big deal. But if I throw in you a million of them, that's going to be a problem, right? So that's really what exposure time means, right? So remember, so we said the X-ray, although it's extremely energetic, million times more than the microwave, but the damage elements related to the amount, to the quantity, and the exposure time, and not necessarily to the energy itself, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now if we're going to microwave, right? So now look what's happened. We have in our phone an average about 1.6 watt, right? And wattage, it's like it's the same for X-ray and it's same for microwave, right? So what's the difference when I say 1 watt of microwave and 1 watt of X-ray? The difference is the quantity, because since the X-ray is a million times more energetic, you need much less of the X-ray photon to do 1 watt compared to 1 watt of microwave, which you need a million times more per second to have the same amount of what we call warp, right? So now what's actually happened? Remember, when we talk about the X-ray, we say the quantity making the damage, right? So here in microwave, although they are very low energetic levels, but they in such a sheer amount, especially when we're doing in today life, right? It's such an insane amount that each one of those photons in one way or the other interact biologically with our body. So just the amount eventually is almost more of that information that it's carrying. It's kind of, and we have another element that, like I said, that, we measure, by the way, we have an EEG. And if I want to talk a little bit about what we did in regarding of our solution, but one of the things is that we measure like, delta waves is like, what's the change? We find out that our brain really related to change and not, because the brain have to prioritize what it's doing, right? So if there is a very big problem, the brain will disregard everything else. But what's he relate to what's, let's say, what's yelling stronger, right?
Yep.
So think about it. Since we presented this EMF constantly in our environment, there is something that yelling constantly to our brain. It leads to react because it stimulates us. Like you said, imagine it's like light or whatever. But it's not, it doesn't have pattern it doesn't have really information for the brain. So it just make your brain stress because it's trying to react. What is it? What is it? What is it? Constantly. And then it disregards some of the other elements, especially chronic disease or progression diseases, because they have a very small change every day. So they are totally disregarded. So that's where the damage actually can be a problem when you in that environment. So that's been presented also almost as a pathogen, right? And even if we rest assured all the debate that there is one thing that we all know: the dose make the poison, right? These principles go across everything. You know that the current safety is since 1996, when the average person talks 7 minutes with no Wi-Fi, no 5G, nothing in there. 7 minutes. Today, the average person is 4 to 5 hours and 7 to 24 hours a day with Wi-Fi and other stuff. And this is go to kids, to pregnant women, to elderly, everybody across the board. So just by putting the principle of the dose make the poison, this is crazy, because we know even water, when you just in access, can be toxic. So imagine when you have something that is bioactive, and now it's presented in such way. See, like the problem was that the FCC never tried to limit, or at least to require, to develop the technology with safety in mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the problem. So they got all the faster, complex, everything, right? So they build a semi-trailer with the best engine and that can carry the biggest load, but there is no brakes or steering, right? So it just, when it's going to do the accident, it's just about time, losing control. And this is where we are. We're working on it with a lot to try to change it. So our job as Bodywell, not just to introduce this technology, but raise awareness and finding a way. We believe that if the incentive going to be, there is a way to do safety that incorporate.
And the science behind it. So I want you to think about this, okay? And my big argument has been for many years that children in our country right now in the United States have the worst nervous systems in the history of the world. And it's this massive epidemic that's brewing that most people they don't even have a clue about, because they don't have accurate ways of assessing and correcting the nervous system like we do. And I've been at this for 3 decades. So I always tell people, if they had a microscope, if I put a microscope on your eyes and you looked around and you saw all the microbes on your skin and the particles and everything, like, you would probably die. It would just mass paranoia in 2 seconds, right? It's the same, and there's so much trying to get us that we're completely unaware and oblivious to, if you think of it that way. And it's way beyond Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi is certainly a massive component. I just want you to think about, if there was a certain set of goggles we could put on and just see the amount of Wi-Fi around us, it would just be insane.
And that's insane. And you mentioned the generation, and I don't want to scare anybody right now, but 6th generation, you remember I mentioned that the first was, analog, second was text and digital lines. Third one was internet. Fourth one was GPS. So in other words, GPS, although it's satellite, it just give you the points, but you have to have a real time. So that was the first time that you need a very high level of streaming, because you have to have a real time processing of the information, for GPS. 5th generation actually was to support some of autonomous driving and give us another level of navigation, because one of the things that's missing from direct satellite was that it doesn't know if you're on the tower or if you're in a bridge, right? So it just has the point. So now we have elevation. So that's make it, people don't realize how complex it is and how more information you need to process. But the scary part comes in 6th generation. Okay, so I don't know if people are aware of what it actually mean, but there is something called RF sensing. RF sensing will be we have this technology today, but RF sensing, imagine that now we're going to have mapping on real time not from photo, not, it's going to be like RF sensing going to be able to sense anything and everything in the environment. So it's no longer interact with my phone. It's actually interact with me. It will be able to identify me by name because, like you said, because it's go through us, right? So it's actually have, our heartbeat, our bone density, it has everything. So it's almost each one of this sense, it's actually a biomarker, almost like your fingerprint, right? It's very unique to you. So that's why I can identify you by name. But it's the reason why they want to develop it, because in the highest level of, there is another level that they're trying to develop, which we're missing. There is a layer in close to the ground that radar and regular elements missing because we don't have that. And they want to develop the autonomous driving and autonomous drones, the drones that are actually going to be in the air. So they have to have something which is going to be live. In other words, it will be able to see live, real time, human, dogs, everything, right? Which sounds good. The problem is, think about it. You're going to be in your bedroom, I still can see you. You're going to be in the restroom, it's going to be 100% lost of really privacy. And that's where they're trying to see if they can do something about it. But that's what it actually mean from data and exposure. So if right now I can direct, to your phone, because when it's go from the tower and me and you standing one next to each other, it's identify you and me as a separate, right? So it's have to identify you. But now, in order to identify and do the RF sensing, it will have to at least 5 times. So in other words, because it will be able to do an angle. So if there is more antennas, and so more than one antenna at the same time shoot on you in a way, because they want to identify angles and other elements of returns to calculate it, which is, it's insane, not just from health, but from almost every reason. And it's always, for me, is like, I want to, we are about technology. We know about technology. We just want to be also safe, And for example, you mentioned Wi-Fi. We're actually involved now on bringing and presenting, there is something called LiFi. I don't know if you heard about it, but LiFi, it's alternative to Wi-Fi. So it's LiFi, it's actually with light and not with RF, right?
Oh, wow.
So the beautiful thing about LiFi is that first, it's instead of broadcasting. So think about the old TV, right? Imagine you have a big thing that broadcasts, really powerful, very dangerous if you're close to it, right? Because it have to go through everybody, everywhere, regardless of who using, not using, is there or not there. This is really Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is that broadcast, insane amount of RF waves to places that maybe you don't use or use, right?
Right.
This LiFi is going to be just almost like a streaming. It's going to be direct only to the one that you use, right? And it's going to be amazing because imagine right now you're using streaming, right? Let's say you have a baby in the next room. He will have nothing because LiFi don't go through walls. So it's going to be only to the, by rooms and only to the people that are actually using it. Amazing. So it's going to be, it's going to be efficient because you don't just broadcast. It's actually faster if you believe it's faster than Wi-Fi. It's safer and it's going to address the situation of privacy that we were talking about it in 6G. So we can see, if I were the regulator, for example, I will actually ban Wi-Fi, let's say, in apartments. Because imagine how you open your Wi-Fi, see how many network you see. Each one of those interact with you, right? Imagine, so it's almost like secondhand smoker. I didn't chew, even if I turn my Wi-Fi, my neighbor have it, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you have the LiFi, so it's very, very limited only to the user and only to the apartment that been used. I think that's going to be a big change. So this is just another proof that with the right incentive, we can develop alternative, which sometimes is even better, right? For our safety, for our, we have to take in conscience, we have to take in account, our choice, because right now you don't have a choice. I mean, you're exposed, you cannot do anything about it. So it's the same way that you want to choose to eat what you want to eat, right? Let's say you're choosing organics, right? And you want a different water. This is supposed to be an option that you will be able to choose what's affecting you. Because like I said, and we mentioned, this is about the sales, this December 25 actually show another path of affecting us through the epigenetic. So this is actually through the BAT protein, and affecting, this is another, kind of discussion to understand. It's, in your area where you see the person as a whole mechanism, right? Not as a, separate elements, and you're trying to understand what's affecting us. But we find out that we can affect DNA, not just the DNA affecting us. So we're not like animals just instinctively reacting. We actually consciously can react and actually create a whole cascade biologically with our body. This is now a very developing section of the science to understand exactly what's actually affecting this what we call the epigenetic, because this is really the software to read the DNA. So the DNA is just the library, but it's almost like the hardware, but the software, actually what's the body will do and so forth, it's actually start with epigenetic. So
you want to think of it, and I guess I'll kind of go through this, and whatever you believe in. I mean, I believe in God as being our creator. Somebody created you, whatever you believe, but we've got this amazing, like, God-made body that has all this God-made software in it for God-made things. If you want to think about it, like, the planet should be there. And nowadays we have so many man-made things. So, like, man-made food, I always talk about God-made foods versus man-made foods. I mean, you don't have the software to actually process man-made foods. And so our bodies, we have ways of helping people to adjust that software and make it better to where it works. Similarly, when it comes to light, there's a lot of man-made light. There's obviously God-made light, and there's man-made light, but people don't get enough God-made light anymore. They don't get enough sun, right? There's a lot of man-made light devices that can be really, really good, and there's a lot of man-made devices that can be really, really bad. It's just like the same across the board. And so I love the Wi-Fi, LiFi. Is that something, the LiFi, you're developing that? Is that right? My understanding?
We are involved. We're not. It's actually really kind of created, and so already actually have a one triple E, IEEE already certifications, but it's actually started in Europe. So we now kind of helping, presenting it, just so people know that there is alternative. But you see, right now, if nobody going to talk about why maybe to change, people will not. You see, LiFi is still not. What we call the options, let's say, with your phone, right? So we're trying to work with manufacturer and guide them. Says, listen, why kids need all this? We developed some software that's going to come with some protections, and the idea was that we have a software that actually can calculate the SAR, your exposure level. So think about it. Your phone is very smart, right? But we don't use it correctly. So think about, let's say you're now driving, and you probably, if you're driving, you're between towers. So it's actually the exposure go high and low, not healthy. And imagine that I send you a 40 gigabyte, email, right? I mean, you're driving, you don't really need to download it. So by downloading it when you drive, you expose yourself to more radiation. You're using much more battery because when the reception is low, it's amplified the power. So it's not efficient. It's not good for the battery. It's not good. When we have that software, it's automatically will tell you you're driving. We wait for you to be in a, whatever, right? So, and if you insist, you can say, yeah, no, I need it right now. But in most cases, it's just going to manage, your exposure, because you wouldn't be amazed how much information we have from your phone. The phone now. What's the next tower? What's the level of, of what we call radiations? What's the items like other phones around you? What's the, Wi-Fi is around you and all that stuff. So, and also it's know how far are you from the phone. Okay. Right. So all this information can be calculated, and just being a smarter way to using it. So if you have a kid, he don't need all this, connectivity and working, right? We can putting a child mode, and then we want to keep him safe, same for pregnant women, for example. So the idea is give you tools to manage technology in a much, much safer way. But if there is no awareness, people who don't have the incentive or the motivation to do it. Like when you talk about, let's say, water, and you people don't realize what it's mean when you sending water through a pipe that is 100 years old. What's required to do through those pipe, right? What it means sanitation, right? That sometimes we drink the water that is actually being recycled. You know what I mean? All that stuff, people don't realize because they think water is just water. But water is basically our main study we did in 2012 was done on water. We did it on water for two reasons. The first is because we want to eliminate 100% placebo effect. So it's people says, you can manipulate it with people and so forth. Doing water have no conscience, don't know what's done on them, right? And we were able to see, and this is done in New York University, right? So we did it, and we were able to show first the effect of EMF on the water. And then in the same time, we show that when we apply Bodywell, how we maintain the pH level, for example, and it's not dropped to the acidic level within 15 minutes, you know what I mean? So this is just one example of us kind of being ahead.
Back up just a second. You said you put Wi-Fi on water and the pH dropped? Is that what you
pH dropped from 7.3 to 6.8 within 15 minutes.
To 6.0? To 6.0?
To 6.8.
6.8. Oh, wow. 7.3 to 6.8. So 0.5 in 15 minutes.
So I want you to think that, we have few things in our body that the brain not allowed. There is no, it's have to regulate right away, right? So you have temperature in your body, your pH, for example. So think about it when something deal with that, like something changes. So now your body constantly need to fix it, if you will, right? And this is the stress that we talk about. This is the exhaustion. This is how some people feel they just don't have enough energy or whatever, because their body constantly kind of trying to fix the problem that is being, deal with. So we really the only one that in this spectrums that we did everything in the United States. We did through 4 different biological testing, if you will, right? So one of them we did on the pH, which was on the water. Then we did the EEG, when we show how again EMF affecting the wave and how they affect with our technology. We did and temperature, right? So we did in a very in a special lab that can detect the 0.0% of temperature, and people don't realize how sensitive we are, because the difference between when you're sick and healthy is just few degrees, 1-2 degrees. So it's not like great, right? And when you have when you talk and it's hitting you, not so much in the way like, let's say fire, but think about like microwave. So microwave, right? Sometimes the middle of the chicken hotter than the outside, right? Because remember, it's hitting by moving, oscillating the molecules of water, not by having a thermal. So in other words, if here it's 2 degrees, inside the brain it might be 2, because it's the concentration of liquid inside your brain is much greater, right? So were you
able to show the temperature change? What is the temperature change with Wi-Fi?
So it's actually a reduction of 50%. So from 2.1, so 45. We just took individuals 45 minutes talking, on the phone. It's increasing his at least what we measure outside about 2.1 degrees, and with Bodywell it was cut in half, so it's less than 1 degree. So. That's and again, people don't realize
just by having this little thing.
Just by having this, yeah.
Amazing.
So that's pretty amazing, because we're dealing with, you probably know about, there is a water contain a very, pH is the amount of ionizations within the water, right? How much? So and water has amazing quality, right? So it has their own energy. That's why I don't like with sanitized water and recycled water. It's almost you're taking the life out of it. So it's like
it should have its own energy. Let's put it to you that way. But a lot of it
it's have to be that natural. What is absorbed from the environment, then the water is actually giving you whatever they're supposed to. It's like in simple medicine or science. Think about it. If you see I don't know, there is a turkey that somebody ran over in the street. By the medicine, even if you wait a week after it's already with maggots and everything else, and you cook it really hard, it's okay. It's like, what I mean? But the idea is that if there is maggots, if there is anything, biological, bacteria, anything, they consume that energy. They change the structure of, even though it's look the same, they change the structure. And people don't realize that protein can build your cells, but proteins like venom can kill and destruct them, right? So it's the same amino acid, same build, but the structure is what's actually is what's important. And in life and frequencies, that actually what's we organize it in a certain way that it's actually much it's effective because like I said, this is like you said, man-made, confusing. We don't. It's very hard even to understand what the level that we present. So let me give you an analogy. So imagine I tap on your skin, right? So every time I tap on your skin, it sometimes can be hot, it can be cold, it can be dull, sharp. And each one of those situations, your brain will react differently, right? Your hot and cold is not reacting the same. Well, people don't realize when we're talking about EMF, we're talking about over 10,000 per second, where the brain is limited about 500, maybe, you know what I mean? So 500 per second, it's the limitation. Above that, the brain going to what we call overreaction. That stress, release, it's actually when is dysfunction, is not operate correctly. It's, it's doing just because it's way too fast to digest and to react correctly. So it's just the brain, it's overwhelming. It's really overwhelming the brain.
It's one of the invisible stresses that people I think are starting to learn about, and hopefully conversations like ours today can enlighten people and let people know that. And you see people roll their eyes. Oh, wow. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong. I mean, it's fine, right? And they just don't know the science behind it. And if you're going to live in this world, I mean, I would love to go live in the wilderness, right? And just not have any technology at all. And, it'd be great, but I still would be exposed. We were talking about this conversation and then all the, the satellites and everything. I mean, you still got exposure even in the wilderness. So it's like you got to have layers of protection. And I think that's the moral of this whole discussion is if you're trying to live in this world, and you don't use the right resources, I say it all the time, and the right devices and the right methods and the right technologies, and you don't follow people who really understand the science behind it, you're just waiting for things to just eat your body and get more and more of your cells unhealthy to where you're going to develop more and more conditions that, and that's a whole nother discussion, but, Big Pharma doesn't want you to they don't want to discover a lot of this because they want people sick. I mean, for a lot of the big companies do, because they make a lot of money, right? And I'm not saying all bad about big pharma; they could be good, but I'm just saying in general, we have to make the world better because this world is getting infinitely more complex to live in on a every second of the world right now. So I really, really appreciate all the technologies that you've offered and that you have. Our members really, really enjoy. I think they maybe don't understand to this degree, but hopefully podcasts like this can make people understand that this is real. We're not making this stuff up. I mean, it's you are more bombarded now by this EMF, these constant invisible light waves that are going through you than you've ever been in the history of the world. Nobody, no ancestor you've ever had has had this. So either you're going to wise up and, armor up and do the right things, or you're just going to be part of the sheep that just collapse.
Yeah, I agree. Just one last point is like you mentioned that man-made, where our body biologically recognized as a foreign. So therefore, you don't have the protection. You see, your eyes know to react. If there is too much light, biologically, we'll be able to, it's going to close your, and minimize your eyes until you close it, right? If you have a fire, we sense it. We know how to get away from it. This is actually a form that the body actually, because our body is designed to interact with EMF, right? That's how we see, that's how we feel. But this form that designed by men, right? It's actually not familiar to the body. Therefore, it's not recognize the problem, right? So it's not give you any advanced warning or keep you away or it's too much. You just don't know it. And unfortunately, we all 100%. There is no control group, right? So we cannot do now people that are not exposed, because we're all exposed to it. So we're all in that, and this is kind of protection, because we all feel worse less and less, and we see, oh, it's all everybody the same, so it's normal. No, it's not normal. And awareness and this kind of discussion, I think that's going to help people understand more. There is so much to talk about. There is a lot of studies that is almost kind of invisible online for whatever reason, but the information is there, the technology is there. We just need to be more aware and pushing for this change that's going to help. Every generation is living more in that aspect, which we don't want to see the result in 20 years. We want to do something right now, so we help not just ourselves, but the generation that follow us.
And that's part of the thing I love the most. When I align myself with any company or any product, I always try to align myself with companies that are futuristic thinking. So many people on the planet, maybe they invent something that's great, and then they just stay there, and they don't do anything else after. They don't try to get better. I am constantly in my practice, in my life, we're trying to find better and faster and more advanced solutions, not only for people in my clinic, but people that are at home that we're helping. So I really, really admire that your company is exactly what we are, where we're just forward thinking, constantly understanding that there could be better tomorrow that we could discover, and we're all in.
Yeah, for sure. We just need our ingenuity also to safety and quality of life, and not just the technology in the other side. So it can be the same way. That's
right. Well, listen, I really, really, really appreciate your time. I appreciate all your efforts in this particular cause. I think it's one of those things now people are starting to become more aware, but we're going to make a big, big push across the world together, just because I feel like without this, people could be really doomed, and just by this one overwhelming thing for their nervous systems, right? Because your nervous system, you kind of brought it, and I do want to touch on this just a little bit. I know I got to go see patients, so I got to get off in a couple of minutes, but I want you to think about your nervous system, right? 80% is sensory. It's what we feel. So imagine, I always talk about the desensitization of our nervous system, because it's not sensing things near what it used to. So you could look at like Native Americans, and they could feel somebody coming, a mile away. And I'm joking, right? But they could feel, they knew what was around them. That was their senses. Those senses were in tune with planet Earth, right? And nowadays, you take a kid on an iPad, and there could be a massive explosion behind them. They don't even pick their head up. I mean, so their senses are so bombarded by so much coming in,
overstimulate,
and it's like there's so much invisible. So I thank you so much for just validating to our audience from science and letting people know this is a real thing, because that's what we're trying to do on our side, is all day make people understand there's got to be layers of protection. Remember, and just for references, we have these on laptops, we have these on computers. Yes.
Yeah, you have a card, the bio card, which I carry in my pockets, whatever. They're actually doing the latest. Remember, we talk about the new biomarkers, and one of them it's that we developed to understand a bit better is HRV, which is heart rate variability, which indicate your ANS, like autonomic nerve system, how your body manage your whole thing, right? And we find out increase dramatically of HRV just by using the card. So the card is really had this secondary effect, which help you go from sympathetic to parasympathetic to what we call the repair and recover. All this is very, very important. I encourage people to challenge us. We're actually the only company that have direct line to the scientists, so they can ask any question they want to debate, they want to ask about studies. Everything is open. We validate our technology in RF exposure lab in California. So the reduction of air is up to 80%. So that and SAR is just the thermal effect. We focus, what I mentioned before, on biological effect, but this is really important. And this is just one. We're trying to get feedback from our customer. Like I said, in the last year, we are involved in a very high level of collaboration with top scientists with this area to even develop it a little bit more, so we have the right biomarkers and have advanced software and hardware to just manage our life a little bit in a better, safe environment, especially for the vulnerables one.
Amazing. Well, listen, got to run. Thank you so much for being here, Dwar. We really appreciate all of your efforts and look forward to a long-lasting relationship of just helping more and more people with our body chargers.
Thank you so much.
With Bodywell. It's actually kind of good names. Body Chargers, Bodywell. We kind of like it. Yeah.
I love the discussion, and I welcome any time if we need to do something more. I would love this discussion with you, and I think it's benefit to the audience. So that's our efforts coming through it.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. It was so interesting. And it's also disheartening to realize how much we're dealing with on this planet. I always tell people, if it's not getting any easier to live on this planet by the second. And so it's so important that you do the right things, you use the right resources, you use the right methods, use the right techniques. That's what we're here to provide you with. So we have this community, it's online, it's called Body Chargers. It's my life's work. It's educating you at home how to help yourself with the best of the best products, methods, technologies for home. So this company that we had this podcast with is one of the companies that we use, and you'll have access to those products once you get a Body Chargers membership. They're absolutely phenomenal. If you want even further help and you want more detailed help with your nervous system and understanding how Wi-Fi is affecting you, you could come to our clinic, the Nerve Health Institute. We have so many different ways that we can help you to stay strong in today's world and not be bombarded by something that you don't even know is bombarding you like Wi-Fi. So thanks so much for being a part of this podcast today. We look forward to seeing you on the next.